There are a lot of different types of dreams. There are the crazy ones that consist of thoughts throughout the day, boiled down to a big mess that makes no sense whatsoever. And it's quite obvious that they are only inside your head. Then there are nightmares that terrify us. And then there are dreams that linger somewhere in between. They feel very strange, and there is something you can't put your finger on, like a feeling when you wake up that this might have actually happened. Do you remember your dreams? Some people don't. There are times I remember and times I have no memory of them at all. But mostly I do remember right after I wake up, and then they fade away. It's interesting to keep a dream journal and then backtrack once in a while. Might turn out to be a good story or a manuscript. There is one more category, however, the real mysterious one, that's been eating away in me for all my life. If you stay with me, I'll tell you an interesting story. I remember how I used to fly in my dreams as a child. I used to fly over our neighborhood, looking down on our house, and I flew to different places that seemed like different worlds, up into the sky, into the night. And I had a certain combination of footsteps that I had to execute before I could take off. I remember that I would think and decide before I went to bed that I would fly tonight and where to fly. And then it would happen exactly like that. Sometimes I lost the control to maintain speed, and I would fall down and wake up. It felt very real, and it was magical. I remember everything so vividly. Jumping between rooftops, doing tricks in the air, being there with all my senses. And not only that, when starting to fall asleep, I can remember the sensation of detaching from my physical body, becoming this other body that felt very light, electric, and pulsating. Gradually, as I grew older, I couldn't remember this combination of steps anymore. I tried so hard many nights, but it was as if the magic was gone. But once in a while it happened. I suddenly remembered one night. I nailed it and took off. And it was like epiphany, like meeting an old friend. But as time went on, I forgot completely. Lately though, it's slowly coming back to me, like short instances of realization that I am flying or that I can fly. But as soon as I've gained speed or come alive in the experience, I start doubting and lose control, fall down and wake up. It's the same feeling, only a little scarier since I'm not used to the different sensations anymore. I recently read an article by a person who had the exact same experiences as me. It's in Swedish, but I'll link it below for anyone interested. He also remembers that when he lay down at night and closed his eyes, he could make a choice. He could choose to either sleep or to go flying. And if he chose to go flying, he would see a whirlwind type of pattern that he was sucked into. And when he got through it, he was in the air, flying. He also remembers that he had a thin, glowing string attached from his chest, going all the way down. And he knew that this string was connected to his real body. And when I read this, I got some flashbacks of this string as well. I can't remember it clearly, but there is a vague memory of it. So I made a thread about this subject in a Dream Interpret group. and it got so many hits and replies with people who could relate. They also had these experiences as children, and some people said they still have it. And I remember that this wasn't a strange thing when I was a kid. I thought everybody went flying at night. I never reflected on why nobody talked about it, because to me it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. When thinking of all of this, it reminds me of the story of Peter Pan, the story about the boy who flies to Neverland with Wendy. But then Wendy grows up and she can't fly anymore. She's forgotten all about it. It's the same with Peter in the movie continuation Hook that came out in the 90s, with Robin Williams playing Peter Pan. He's all grown up now and has forgotten everything about flying and Neverland. It was one of my favorite movies growing up. What if they are not just stories though, not just dreams? What if James Matthew Barrie, who wrote Peter Pan, also had these experiences as a child? I find it very fascinating because it is exactly the same as an OBE, an out-of-body experience. And I have had short instances of these throughout my life, when meditating and being half asleep. Many people also experience them when they are near death, but doctors and scientists exclude them as hallucinations only. Many believe it's connected to a substance called DMT. DMT has been named the spirit molecule, and research has found we produce some amounts in our sleep and an excess when we die. There are also breathing techniques that supposedly produces DMT inside the brain through extreme oxygenation. And in some parts of the world they take a natural substance called ayahuasca, which produces DMT. And it supposedly pulls you out of your body and takes you to another world. Now, I'm not into taking stuff, either drugs or any outside substance, to influence my brain. Well, except for coffee. But what if there are some biological factors that's been messed up that we can fix somehow? What if the mixture of substances and chemicals in our system is just right when we are young and becomes imbalanced as we grow older? What could be a factor then? The food, lifestyle, stress, fear? Or are we conditioned to believe these things don't exist? What is the secret here, the key to it all? What if this combination of steps that I had to execute is really a manifestation of some chemical reaction taking place inside the brain and the body that makes it possible to leave the body? And this manifestation differs between people. But as we grow older, it becomes harder for the system to pull this off. It's interesting because of what we know lately of DMT, cannabinoids and other substances that we produce naturally in our brains. The third eye, which is another name for the pineal gland inside the brain, also pops up throughout history, described as the spiritual window to other realms. And this is also the part of the brain where we produce DMT. Many cultures talk about this, but modern science sleeps on these subjects. What if we all have the ability to go out of our bodies when we are children? And why does it fade away? I find all of this so intriguing that I could go on with my thoughts forever, but I want to touch on some other things as well. Besides the out-of-body experiences, I've had multiple other experiences when it comes to dreams. Also, as a child, I had something that is called night terror, which is described as a sleeping disorder, where you experience feelings of panic, fear, and terror. But I believe nothing is that simple that you can just call it a disorder and be done with it. because, as in the case with flying, I can also remember the terror episodes vividly. What I saw, what I heard, and what I felt. It began when I was around 4 years old, and I had them for about 2 years. And here's how they would play out. I would brush my teeth and get ready for bed, lay down, get tucked in and close my eyes. And the next thing I remember is seeing a strange pattern that I cannot really describe. The pattern was moving, transforming, like a 3D grid, but beyond 3D. That's the closest I can describe it. And it was the same pattern every time. Following the pattern was the strange metallic noise. It was like I was in a factory. And then came the whispers in my ear. The same voices every time. Whispering what I recall as nonsense or a different language that I couldn't understand. And shortly after came the fear. I felt a terrible fear and I got out of my bed. But I didn't feel at home in my body. It was like it was me, but it wasn't. Like something right out of a Twilight Zone episode. And every time my mother came running in the room, and here is the most scary part, I didn't recognize her. I yelled out that she was not my mother, she's someone else. The same with my brothers and father. I couldn't recognize them. I screamed and screamed out in fear, and it felt like I didn't belong here. Who were these people? I was in this state for about 20 minutes, and then they would calm me down after my mother got me in the bathroom and I took a leak. Same episodes every time. They came like every 2 weeks, and this went on for 2 years. And every one of my family members remember this, because they got as frightened as me, maybe even more, seeing me in this state. I've always wondered what I experienced, and I've heard stories of similar but not exact experiences from other people, where they mention they also saw a pattern every time. And that's what gets my brain going. I saw, heard, and felt exactly the same every time, like clockwork. And I can't help to think that it was some otherworldly experience from another dimension or something alike. Well, that makes it more exciting anyway. Are dreams just dreams? A collection of thoughts in the subconscious boiled together in one big stew of nonsense? Or is there something more here? Modern science is even clueless about most of the stuff going on. And out-of-body experiences are real. Many people can tell you that. Maybe all of us had them when we were kids, but we've just forgotten. Did you fly at night as a child? Or do you have any other experiences to share? Please do, and you'd make me very happy by subscribing and supporting me on Patreon. I'd be very thankful. Till next time.